Hello and welcome back to Deconstructed. I'm your host Sam Animo Mackenzie, and with me, as always, Harry Nero Richards. And today we've got a guest. We brought in an expert because we're not, frankly, and we've got the editor-in-chief of the new Dust2 Sweden site, Kalle. Kalle, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. No one's ever asked me that before. Harry's a bit more of a bastard than that.
You're not going to try to pronounce my entire name, though.
Am I fuck?
Not even the gamer tag, come on. That's the easy one.
Go on then.
Hallå Krimz.
Yeah, see, I don't make sense
It's not that... that sounded French, so...
It's French.
It sounded French, yeah.
See, this is why I don't attempt things, and I thought I was going to get away with it, but apparently not.
No, we're good.
And I guess for the sake of it, Harry, how you doing, mate? You alright?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm fine. That'll do.
Right.
Moving on
Same
quickly.
as always. So we said we brought Kalle on as an expert today, and that's because last week Harry decided that we were going to talk about the potential of a Swedish Fnatic team. Because Fnatic have been unstable for years, and when Messi took over as IGL, it seemed like it might be all right. They had a few positive results at the start, and quickly faded into nothingness, and once again they're rebuilding their team. And Kalle's already done an article about where he thinks a potential new Swedish Fnatic should go. So, Kalle, I thought we'd start by asking you, and I guess without as much bias as possible, is this the right time for Fnatic to go back to Sweden, or is it a case of it's just the right time for Sweden to get its top players together again, because obviously they're a bit split at the moment?
That's a good question, actually. It's in Fnatic's mind, I think it's never the right time to go back to Sweden, because they want to still be international, but in every sense it's the correct move if they would go back to a Swedish roster right now. In every sense. Because a Swedish team that you can build right now is without a doubt a better team than Fnatic was recently. And you will get all the NIP fanboys immediately. You will sell 1,000 shirts within a day.
The old Ronaldo argument.
Well,
honestly...
Maybe if they had nicer jerseys, but yeah.
Well, they used to have nicer jerseys. They're teasing the new one. But I think it's... I do agree with you, because I think we've talked about... We did the episode on NIP, and we were talking about how international teams is kind of... They're just... When there's... If you're going to be an international team, you need to be like Vitality or FaZe, right? Yeah. These kind of middling international teams just lose their identity completely. They're just alienating their fan base. The players aren't really good enough to justify it, and it's like it's where the future's going. But for an org like NIP or Fnatic or someone, is it worth it to be slightly worse, but to still have that Swedish fan base, that Swedish core or whatever? And honestly, it's hard to know. If you want to be the best in the world, I think international is kind of the best option. But for a team of Fnatic's size or whatever, it's better to be a mid-table Swedish team than a mid-table international team. That's basically what I mean. I don't know if that's harsh on the talent that Sweden has or anything, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's the main part of it?
Yeah, that's where I agree with you. But that's an easier argument to make for NIP, because they never really left Sweden until Hampus went on his break this year, and now they're not Swedish at all. It would be easier for them to keep being Swedish just because they're Swedish. And their Swedish org has always had a Swedish team. Fnatic has gone off that route so many years ago now already. But the thing is that there is a better opportunity now to build a good Swedish team than there was a year ago. And Fnatic has the opportunity to actually get some other players than NIP, like Nawwk. Nawwk will never touch NIP with his brother's hand, So, but he can go to Fnatic. He wouldn't have a problem going to Fnatic.
So just to confirm your views then, Harry, you definitely think it's the right time to move away from international?
Well, I think if I was Fnatic, I would be quite cynical about it and think that, we should just have the Swedish team. Because being the main Swedish team is better than being in the group of OG, NIP, all that nonsense. Like, they're just all the same level of crap. Like, at least be something unique about your level of crap, you know? And that's why I think. And I think you can get a kind of solid team because, like, having a Swedish team, like, there just needs to be one Swedish event and you make the playoffs, and that's really cool that the Swedish team made it. But the current Fnatic making playoffs, you're like, okay, fine, they're going to lose. Like, there's nothing exciting about the current Fnatic. Even with Mezzy there, even, like, I know they're a British org and they tried this Spodia thing and everything like that. But they are, in CS, they're a Swedish brand. Like, they need to accept that, and I think now would be the right time to just go back to that. So yeah, I agree. I think it's time for Sweden to get his team back.
Okay then. So I guess what we should do is build a little team for them. So I think in that sense, we'll start with the man that, you know, if it was going to happen, there's no way he's going anywhere because he is at this point Mr. Fnatic. And we'll start with Krimz. And, you know, Krimz for me, he's a player that if they were to stay international, I would be looking at getting rid of him within a year. But that being said, with the last roster, he was like the second best performing player, which I'm not sure he was necessarily meant to be. So what's your two thoughts on Krimz? Like, how solid is he? How good can he be? Can he be on a team that's like pushing higher if this Swedish team was to do well?
Well, he obviously isn't the Krimz that he was a couple of years ago, but the main thing with him is that he is solid. He doesn't fuck up. If he holds a site, he gets 2 people and then dies. That's what you know what you get with him. And the problem Sweden has had, like NIP for instance, is overly aggressive players and no one wants to play the shittier sites and be a slow player, and that's Krimz. That's exactly what Krimz is. And can do it and just does it good, and it's also fucking great for the vibes in the team because an hilarious dude.
Yeah, and it's that winning mentality as well, right? Like he's that type of player. There's not a lot of winners left in Sweden scene. He's probably the only one, to be honest. So you can't really go without him, I think, especially if you're Fnatic. So yeah, he's a slam dunk. He's an anchor that will be solid for a while yet, and the idea is that if you have the Swedish team, then other Swedish teams will develop, and there will, because if there's full Swedish teams, if there's like, I talked about this with Denmark before, if there's like a depth of Swedish teams, and there is now, like they're back on the HW ranking page. There's enough Swedish teams. Finally, like they're back, and if you have that type of structure, then you can start to replace these types of more passive anchor type players. Because if you have a Swedish team, someone has to be the anchor in it, and if there's like 6 Swedish teams, like someone's going to turn up. And I know INSITE does it as well. Maybe we'll get to him later, but yeah, Krimz is solid foundation block, and if there's going to be Swedish long term, there's going to be other anchors, and they'll be able to replace him. But right now, it makes absolutely 100% sense to keep Krimz for sure.
Well, I think there's one extra thing with Krimz in that sense of, you know, not only is he a winner, he is someone with more experience than any name we will mention. But, you know, there's going to be a couple names that we'll mention that don't really have experience, have never really played tier 1, or when they have, maybe it was online, or maybe it was just, you know, limited tournaments here and there. And I think having someone like Krimz at that point, you know, even more so than the Hampuses and the Brollans of the world, is going to prove to be invaluable, at least for that like first period, even if someone incredible does then pop up at like a Godsend or Alliance or something like that. But okay then. So we got Krimz. Krimz is nailed on. He's always going to be. Should we do IGL next? Because, you know, Hampus obviously wants to make this roster, and at that point Hampus is the obvious shout. You know, who's IGL have nipped for a while. But before we actually talk about Hampus and the possibility of Hampus as the IGL, I'd actually rather talk about the possibility of him not being the IGL, because, you know, there was that period of time where it looked like he wasn't going to IGL for NIP before he fucked off and did whatever he was doing. So, Kalle, do you think there's someone else who could maybe come in, be the IGL of this team, even with Hampus still on it, so that Hampus could just play and be more of a star figure?
Good question. And there's like the options you have right now are like Shine from Eyeballers, Golden from Godsent, and like CTR. That's like the best options. I'm not gonna like put in Jakinjo or I can't even remember who, Robin from Alliance. It's like that's not too good. So it's basically Golden, CTR, or Shine. If you don't want to put like another player like a Krimz on a role like that. And I don't think that's the best idea for Hampus either, because Hampus wants to IGL. He has a system he likes to play, and he kind of plays better when he's an IGL. It feels like he just... When he plays good and is an IGL, NIP would win, well now, 13-0. That's a possibility when at that time. He would just like do his thing, just sit in the smoke, call from there, and just go out and kill 3 people. So I think it's better off as an IGL, and I think a Swedish team should have him as an IGL, not as a mad fragger, because we have other mad fraggers that can do that role.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like it's something I've said for a while.
We kind of have a lack of IGLs in Sweden still. There's like up and coming ones are good, but that would fit in a top 10 team. There's not many.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, it's kind of like the blame out situation, I think, a little bit, because it's like ideally you don't want star players IGLing, but then some star players do want to IGL, and it's part of their identity in game, and they don't want to be listening to someone else. Like Hampus is someone who, like, even though he's not always with the pack, like he is that type of aggressive IGL who wants to get all the information and then call around it. And if he can't call around it, then it's just slightly worse. Like I don't think it's similar to like a Yikinda who kind of does a similar role but shouldn't be IGL. Like I think for Hampus, he's been an IGL for long enough that you just have to do it. And yeah, the other options are just, they're too young, I think. They're not quite experienced enough. Like his ETR, I think, has some potential from what his few interviews I've read. Never even heard of that Shine guy, to be honest. So yeah, I think Hampus IGLing is just easier to work around.
Shine is the guy from Eyeballers who's IGLing.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good right now. Almost beat Daniel Seagulls today.
I do want to...
JW still using the sword off, is he? Or...
He is. Amazing.
I do want to say, though, right, and this is it's just some golden prop here.
Mm-hmm.
He has managed to make Plopsky not look utter dog shit. So, maybe he can't do it at tier 1, but if he can do that, he might be a miracle worker.
Do you know what Plopsky has looked shit for the last couple of years? Because you had the Res and Brollan in the same team. Guess what Plopsky does best? Being aggressive. It's like, and he did like the supportive roles better in NIP than Rested. So,
yeah,
that's always the issue with Swedish teams, I think.
Yeah, but the problem is like Golden doesn't shoot hard enough, you know. That's just the case. And like
that would be the one thing. Yeah, I'm not sure he could hang at tier 1.
No, and there's like you can also like throw in Lekro and Freiburg into the mix if you want to, but like a Lekro could work. Lekro could work, but then you have to have a lot of firepower. He's still really fucking good. Like he destroys when they play with the Boomer Demons, but still, Hampus is the best choice.
Yeah, look, I'm not gonna argue that Hampus isn't the best choice, because I do think he probably is. But you know, I've always just quite liked Golden, so I did want to make sure he got brought up at some point. But so Hampus as an IGL, you know, obviously Fret said recently, and it's the reason he's no longer on NIP, that there was a lack of leadership, and you can put that down to, you know, maybe players lost respect for him, maybe they weren't listening to him. You know, we see shit like that all the time with IGLs, but do you think that's maybe something that's worrying about Hampus, and that maybe he might have lost some confidence and assertiveness?
I did an interview with Fret, and he wanted to like point out that it wasn't just Hampus, that wasn't just the lack of leadership, but Hampus also said that some people weren't listening to him, and I can only expect that to be newer players, because that hasn't been a problem before, so it can't be the Swedes in the team, you know. And assertiveness, that's not a problem for him. Like, the way he and DGL talk to each other, like in game during timeouts, I don't think that's a problem with like leadership. But then it more comes down to which coach you have, and you need like a different kind of coach than some other teams need, because it's a different kind of human being, you know.
Yeah. So before we move on from Hampus, then, Harry, I know you have some strong thoughts about Hampus.
Right.
Well, you've certainly shared some to former NIP analyst Nova H Designs in the past.
Right.
So, what do you think about Hampus and his aggression?
I just don't like the general type of player he is, and it just seems gimmicky to me. It's in the Yakinda type of thing as well. I just think generally players like that are never going to be consistent, build around your star players type people. And this is the only thing with this Swedish lineup, is that inevitably Hampus is going to be one of those stars. And I think if Hampus is your third star, your fourth star, then that's when the style looks really good, right? But yeah, the aggression, I think he has cooled it down a little bit since like that, because it was COVID when it was all in vogue and everyone was doing it, right? And I do think he's clearly smart enough that he can adapt to it. But yeah, I think, to be honest, that's just because Jack overrates him so much. I don't think I was at. He makes me think I hate him, but he's clearly quite good, you know? It's just that when people are just that outrageous, you just have to call them out. But yeah, he's adaptable. I think when he's in-game leading, it works better. I think it's easier to call around. When he's trying to operate in someone else's system, like especially like an Alexi B system, like you could see why that didn't work out, basically. And I think that's just as much about Hampus as a player as it is about him as a caller. But I think in this team, with him calling, if he's like the third star, and I think we're probably aiming for him to be that kind of third star, I don't think it needs to be a problem. But yeah, I just wouldn't expect consistency from him, because that's just the role he's playing. That's just the style of play that he's chosen for himself. That's my only criticism of it.
And the most interesting style of play there is, in my opinion, and the most underrated style of play. The hardcore entry fragger the hardcore entry fragger role is underrated. Even though that's not really what Hampus does, he does like more, because he can also like, he can be an entry fragger in a lurky kind of way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that, like more like the art stupid things, those kind of things, but not as over the top.
Yeah, and I have lumped him in with Art and Nafany before, and I think he's obviously the best out of that trio individually, like by far the best. But it is kind of that, I'm going to take space, and if I die, it's fine, because I could just call with better information. And I think the game's kind of developed past the idea that information matters more than your IGL dying. Like, we don't see it all too much anymore. And I think Hampus has, like, this NIP team's obviously been a dumpster fire, but I don't think it's Hampus's fault. I think it's hard to tell, and I think you have to look more at the NIP team when it was Swedish, when it was overperforming some of its parts a ridiculous amount. And that's when even I have got to say that, yeah, Hampus is obviously probably the biggest part of that, to be honest. Just his calling. So yeah, I think he slots into his team, and he slots into it fine. It's just we're going to need the firepower around him so that you can kind of hide the inconsistency. Because on NIP, they were all that inconsistent. And I think that's when you can poke holes in individuals a bit more. But in a functioning system, Hampus is fine. That's my flip-flop on him.
A last couple, well, you got to get your flip-flop in, but a last couple questions about Hampus and for both of you this is, in terms of, like IGLs in the world, and you can do this in tiers or whatever, where do you actually slot Hampus in?
Gosh.
Like if we do tiers, and A tier, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I could go full on Swedish and just say S tier, but nah, I won't.
Yeah, I think this is like a whole collection of like, there's obviously the great IGLs, and I think he's in the like kind of mass good IGLs. I don't think he's probably like close to the top of that. I can't list off my head, but maybe like top 10, top 20, maybe. I don't know. I think he's a good enough IGL to be on the top 10 team for sure.
Yeah,
and be the
without a doubt. Like he would make G2 better.
Oh God, that'd be interesting to see. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe. So the last question then, does that mean you both think that he's good enough that potentially he could make this team overperform? Like, kind of did with Nip in the past, right?
Like, if NIP were in the quarters of Antwerp and played pretty close to face in that game, like, they could have won that game. For some reason, Kerrigan became the best nuke player in the world. And that's a team with LI, with Essetag as an upper. So, yeah, if they can do that, yes. Hampus can make a team overperform.
Yeah, he just deserves to have the chance to do it, I think. And it does seem like he's the one pushing this project from behind the scenes. So yeah, I think he deserves that chance. Hopefully, all gives it to him. Might not be Fnatic. We'll see, I guess.
Okay, we'll move on then. And I think, the next name we have to mention is Brollan, because it feels like, even if the potentially was other names out there, like, we spoke about Plopsky earlier, maybe Plopsky in different roles could perform, but Brollan is kind of that, like, he was at least once hailed as that next big thing for Sweden. Nip paid so much money for him, it never really worked out, so it feels like Brollan has to be on this team. So we'll start with you, Harry. If Brollan's on the team, is he an anchor or a rotator? How much do you give him?
Yeah, it depends who else is there. I think if someone like Nilo, like, we'll go on to him later, but if someone like Nilo is the real deal, then Brollan for me is anchor. I think in the ideal Swedish team, you'd have Brollan as like the big site anchor, and then Hampus rotating, and then a star rifler rotating as well. I think that's where you get the most out of him. And then on T side, yeah, he has to be. And that's the kind of thing, like Hampus, he is kind of quite aggressive. But he's kind of more conventional type of aggression. Like, they can coexist in a team for sure, like those two, but I think you can't add a third one at that point. And Nilo maybe a little bit too much aggression, and that's kind of where it gets hard to work out, because like Sweden, all their best players seem to be these aggressive riflers, basically. So you're looking at it and you want your real heavy hitters to be one of them. And can Brollan be that guy? Like, now, like, honestly, since the Krieg, have we really seen like that star of power really be there? Like, I know there's lots of asterisks over the Fnatic rosters, and Nip is just, there's so many role clashes that you can't really judge any of the riflers for being inconsistent, because it's literally map to map. Like, you're the star player on this map, and then you're the bitch on the other map, and it's like, well, what do I do now? So I think it is hard to judge Brollan from the outside, but we can only go off what we can see, and I think from what we can see the last few years, it's been pretty dire, and I think he probably will end up on the new Hampus project, whatever, but I'm unconvinced that he can be the star player. I think I would rather gamble on a Nilo. I'll say Nilo because obviously I've just sorted by rating on HTV. I'm not going to pretend I've ever watched him, but someone a bit fresher, someone a bit younger, who can have the CS2 mechanics down and not rely on a Krieg. And then Brollan can also slot in with Hampus as the kind of like second, third star. But I think you want a real heavy hitter, you want a donk, and Brollan can't be donk, because you need a rifler to carry you in CS2. That's kind of what's developed. And I think Brollan, I don't know. I'm sure Kalle will defend him, but I'm not as convinced of his star power now than maybe I was even when Nip signed him. I thought there was a player in there. I've just not really seen it, I think, is the issue.
There is a player in there. Of course there is. And if you want Brollan on your team, he's supposed to be your first star, basically. First or second. You can't have him as taking any of the shit roles. You can't have him as an anchor. Like, you just have to give him all the best spots you can. And that's a problem that NIP had, of course, because he's a like fit same player as Res, basically. And they couldn't have both those exact players, It didn't work. Like, Res was kind to give Brollan a on overpass, even though Res was the best overpass player in the world at that time, because you know what Brollan could do. But then it just felt like it split all the positions and it never fit. So if you want Brollan, then you need to have him as a super aggressive rifler. And like a team with Hampus and Brollan, it works because you can have 2 aggressive guys, 2 defensive guys, and an AWPer. So yeah, you can minimize first star. And I love Nilo, but it's not that developed yet. It's not a risk I would be willing to take if I was like a team owner. Not just yet.
So
at that point,
also he's still in school.
Then Brollan is the guy, I think.
Yeah, and Nilo is still in school, I think. Last year though, so.
But okay, if we look at it from maybe a financial aspect, just for the sake of the boring amount of realism that you have to do at some point. Obviously, Nick paid, what was it, 600k for him. They're going to want to, I have no idea what the deal is with his contract, but they're going to want to recoup some amount of money, I'm sure. Is that where you have to look at a Nilo or a Plopski and, kind of be more realistic with how much an organisation is going to be willing to spend? And if so, who do you look at then? Do you give Plopski that fair shot at tier 1 because he already has the experience?
I don't know. That's a hard question because like Plopski is starting to get good again with his new Godsend lineup. It wasn't interesting before, but that was also because Joel stole all the headlights, and then stole the entire...
I'm not going to mention him as an option, I imagine.
No, not at all. But like, if we're talking like someone, if you want to get crazy about it, you sign Alvid from Alliance. He's the next big star of Sweden, without a doubt.
He was on Sam's list, I think,
I just want to point out that earlier I asked Harry to just double check all of Avid's roles because I was like, yeah, I watched him play like 2 maps. I thought he was really fucking good. Can you check? And Harry responded, "Who the fuck is that?" So
yeah, but because
that's a win for me.
This is
only Alliance.
I
wrote the article about Alliance. To be fair, I should know.
Yeah, he says this is only second ever team. The way he was the highest rated Faceit player in Sweden with like 4,000 elo or whatever. I don't know if Faceit did that good. And then he played 1 season with Kappa Bar, which basically was just a mixed team. Do love me some Kappa Bar, best franchise in the world. But he's just so good. It's fucking incredible because since he's never like done anything before, and now he is the reason why Alliance is a scary team.
Yeah, I mean, I watched him. I would say it was Ents that he played against in Blast Full Showdown, and like honestly, I was just kind of impressed by how well Alliance matched up against Ents anyway. But Avid in particular, like, he seemed really calm, really collected, like someone who, like, I'd heard of everyone else on the team, I'd never heard of him. He's a player that coming up against Ents, who were like second in the world at the time, you'd probably expect to crumble, and I think he was just probably the best player on the server in that series. If not, like, at worst, second best. Like, even outshone Ents. He looked really good. And, I am glad you brought him up in that sense because I didn't know whether that was just I'd watched 2 maps of the guy or whatever it was. But, like, yeah, he seemed good. And, like, he was someone that I was going to bring up later as, like, maybe a potential 5th. But Harry, in that sense then, if you were having to go for a realistic option, would you go for one of these younger guns or would you look at Plopski and think fair crack?
If you can't get Brollan, it's the thing that if we're doing it with Fnatic as well, like obviously Fnatic and Nip don't love each other, I don't think. So yeah, I think you're gonna hope that Brollan, because when Brollan joined Fnatic, it was like early 2022, right? So if he's on, it depends if he's on a 2-year. Yeah, sorry, join that. So like a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, like it could be up soon. So it's not like out of the question.
Right off I think Katowice.
Yeah, so that'll be like February, March time. So yeah, I think Brollan shouldn't have too long left, and I think you want to go for someone new. Like, what type of player is Avid? Because on the stats, he looks like a bit more passive than Brollan at least. So that could work in the same team as him, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It's just like that's just want to get crazy because he's still so extremely unproven, But like, if you need to get Brollan, otherwise you have to go and spend even more money on res, and you can't really do that. So it's just like if you want to build a team now that is like a super team, then it is Brollan. You gotta have Brollan.
Yeah, I think these kind of players you want around Brollan, not instead of him. I think for this to work, you kind of need Brollan, solid AWPer, which we'll get to, and Hampus, and then that's when you can kind of gamble on the younger elements. Like we've got Krimz in this lineup, but there's worlds where he might not feature if it's not with Fnatic. So like this, I think I agree. I think Brollan, you need Brollan back, and that's not 2023 Brollan, that's 2020 Brollan, and then that's when this team can start actually getting some upsets together, I think.
And that's when he can. That's what he can get. Like if we're talking, if just Hampus and Brollan were to get brought into Fnatic right now, it's such a good replacement for Roy. Like so good. He's just a better player than Roy.
Yeah, he fits really well into that system for sure.
Yep.
Okay then. So Brian's nailed in, Hampus nailed in, Krimz nailed in. AWPer, I feel like there is obviously, Nawwk, who is the extremely obvious one. But again, like we did with Hampus, before we talk about Nawwk, is there anyone else you think could do it?
JW. It's like he's actually been so good right now. But
I'm
like
double checking that. I'm calling bullshit on that. There's no way he's being good.
Oh, he's good. You don't lose it to that extent. He's like playing like tier 3. Like, of course he's farming. It's JW,
it's
man.
good.
Show some respect.
He's farming, is he? He's farming. Yeah, what's his rating in the last 3 months?
It got to be at least 1.05. 1.05. He's farming.
Kalle, without looking?
Without looking? I tried to look up something, but that's not it right now. Like, 1.07. I don't know.
1.01. Farming, boys.
Farming.
He's farming.
Okay,
all things hard on CS2, okay?
Last month, 1.09. There we go.
Yes. Okay. Dunks.
Okay.
Dunks.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Fine.
Yeah, so no, but like for serious, like it's sad to say, but he's too old. But also he has this entire project. He's the like CEO of Eyeballers, so he wouldn't like. He would join the Fnatic if they called probably, but that's not realistic. But it's better to like below that. What do we have? Boda Master, he's not good enough. Era, not good enough. Jackinho, not good enough. That's like the top players, and
just Hype up.
Yeah, but Hype has taken an extended break from Counter-Strike.
Yes, that'll do it. Never mind.
Yes, he is the second best operator in Sweden, but he has taken a break from CS. He said he might never return. So that's a problem. Because he's so good. It was so good. Like it was so fun to watch. And like in the beginning of this year, when he was still at Prospects, he was farming everything. He was destroying everyone. And then sadly he's not here anymore. So there is only one option, and that's Nawwk. But for the first time in like many years, we're having interesting talents come up now, like TVS that's played with the Prodigies, and Silence, who played with Prodigies for like 2 games, and he's gonna get picked up to something else now. Don't really know what. So there's like at least 2 players and some other ones that are like up and coming, really young. So when Nawwk gets shit, we can take up some of these players in like 2-3 years. There are players, and like Era could improve as well. He's been really good in CS2 for some reason.
Freddy's going to be really sad that his good mate Fuzi wasn't mentioned.
I
really
forgot
sad.
about him because I just thought of players on Swedish teams. Fuzi is good, but he's not as good as Nawwk.
Yeah, he's not good enough. But before we talk about Nawwk, sorry Harry. I did just want to ask about Era. Because I'm not going to pretend I've ever watched him. But a brief look on the profile, he looks like he is solid. What makes you say he's not good enough?
Well, it's just the simple fact that Nawwk is better. That's like the simple fact. That's all to it. And it's also like it was kind of shit to see him go from like Gamer Legion, who was at an RMR, to then play for Young Ninjas for a while, and it just felt like in Young Ninjas it didn't perform at all. And now in Godsent it's starting to perform, which is really nice. And for some reason this Godsent team is better than the old Godsent team that was on paper the much better team. That's like Draken, is he better than Era? Like at that point when they started the Godsent project, it was like, yeah, but now he's just being good. But I need to see more because it feels like he hasn't had the opponents in such a long time that is getting now with Godsent.
Fair enough. And at that point, I've got to say, because you've reminded me he's existed, fuck Nawwk. Draken's in the team. We don't even need to talk about Nawwk. It's Draken. Most entertaining Counter-Strike player to ever watch outside of Borup on a stage, shaking away.
I thought you said on a stage, because if you just said entertaining and we've already talked about JW, like, come on.
Oh, yeah, look, I'm not being silly.
Not in the
here,
positive sense, I don't think.
But watching the way that Borup dies in a round is the best thing that happens in any round of Counter-Strike.
He's just catches strays. 2 episodes running.
He dies in the funniest ways. But okay. Yeah. Let's stop talking about Danes because we're not here to do that. Let's talk about Nawwk then. Nawwk, probably one of the most hard done by players in Counter-Strike history. I kind of thought he would fade into obscurity, but obviously with Apex this year, he did something pretty great, and he was a key player in doing that. Gave me some banger quotes in Paris, so I love the guy. He's proved now he can do this consistently. On a team like Fnatic, he'd arguably have more of an opportunity. Like, can Nawwk be that kind of like that true star that this Fnatic team would need to actually like challenge to be better than that tier of crap, as Harry put it?
It's like in Paris he proved that he can beat tier 1 teams. That's like what he proved there again. And the thing with Nawwk is at his time in NIP he was very inconsistent, like extremely inconsistent, and it felt like emotionally he was inconsistent as well. He did take a break from competing at the time in NIP because they like almost forced him to, because it was a very classical opera that's in your friend group, very just emotional and like gets frustrated a lot. But since coming into Apex, he's been maturing like hell, and he's also become so fucking clutch. Like, he's the same kind of opera in a sense that Cadian is. That like it does what it needs to do, and then he for some reason wins an insane 1-on-3. That's like that's what I see when I see Nawwk.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because he's really this modern type of AWPer. Like, he's passive enough that it would work in a team like this where, with Hampus and Brollan, you are going to be in a lot of 3v5 sometimes. And a player like Nawwk can really unlock those types of situations. And I think you kind of need an AWPer that is a little bit more passive, just the way the profiles in this team work. And I think Nawwk is definitely perfect for that. The one thing is, I think Apex, they've already lost Sticker and JL, right? So would they lose the major spot if they sold him now?
Oh, right, that's what you're saying.
Right?
Didn't they choose to lose Sticker?
I guess they could just bring Sticker back, so maybe that's not that relevant.
Yeah.
But
there's also like just been a conversation that people in Sweden have been saying, why not just make Apex a Nordic team? Keep JKM and the new guy, and add Hampus and Brollan. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Sense is the new guy.
Yeah. So obviously, we're obviously going for the full Swedish lineup, but yeah, there's still options to have that kind of top 10 team, but it'd be a Swedish core, I guess, and that would be that type of team that, like, it obviously is an option. We're just going for the fun way of full Sweden, and I think if you are going full Sweden. Well, I mean, I'd stick Device in there. I think he's the best Swedish-speaking AWPer, but Nawwk can go second if they don't have the funds for it.
Actually, like, if full Swedish, before when I worked at Fragbite, we did every year, like, where profiles could say their best Swedish team, like if they had to build a team.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last year, I didn't have an AWPer. I just put Halzerk.
So there you go. He might be out of a seat as well.
Yeah, but like Nawwk and Halzerk are kind of on the same level in my opinion. Just that Halzerk is more aggressive and more crazy personality-wise, but like on tier they're like just as good.
I think I'd say Nawwk is better than Halzerk. I think I'd say
Nawwk's
that
easier.
Actually,
He's
no, I
easier to
think
build
I'd say
around.
that with confidence.
Yep.
I'm actually quite confident Nawwk is a better player than Halzerk. But okay then, we've got an AWPer, and we've got one last slot on the team. There is a very obvious name to mention in Isaac. I think he's only got better since IM has left Gamer Legion, because I think if I remember right, back when we did our episode on Gamer Legion, me and Harry did say that, you know, if they could keep IM and Shui to improve, it would be Isaac and Kiels that would have to go pretty quickly. I'm not sure I'd necessarily say that about maybe either of them anymore. But before we talk about why it probably should be Isaac, you know, we brought up Avid earlier, Nilo. Is there any other names you think should be in the hat for this final spot?
Well, it's easy to just like throw out players, but of course Pepsor has to be mentioned, in my opinion. He's also been like, it feels like eyeballs have been improving like crazy this last month, really. And he's been one of the most shining stars, in my opinion. But also like, yeah, that's like the big one, I would say. Otherwise, Bob XD, of course, and Rolf, they're exciting players, but still not there yet, I would say. And then there's other players like coming up that are young talents. But from another standpoint, it's like that's like Avid and Pepsor, I would say, are the like other two that has to be mentioned.
And does one of them fit better than the other for this, or is like to get one of those in is where you talk about like Krimz being too old or not being able to get Brollan?
I don't really know. I just know they're good at CS. That's like all I know.
Fair enough.
So this is Swedish problem. They're always, he's good. They can coexist.
Yeah,
this is the thing, 'cause
you know.
Yeah, like this last guy has to be an anchor, I think. From what we've said about Brollan and Hampus, it has to be an anchor. And I think that's why Isaac is such an obvious pick. But yeah, if one of these youngsters can be that kind of star lurker, because we know Krimz isn't going to be the star lurker anymore. That's kind of, I guess because of Hampus, it's probably hard to work out like an exact T-side role, at least for this, because Hampus can lurk and he can be in the pack with Brollan. Like there's lots you can do. But yeah, I think Isaac is it just makes a little bit too much sense. And I think Gamer Legion have done better than I thought they would do without Shui and Ema, but still not well enough where you think Isaac shouldn't be too hard to get out. I think if you really are building this Swedish dream team, like surely you'd be able to kind of get Isaac out.
The only problem here,
I think so.
The problem when I say is easy to get out, I was just thinking back to like 2019 when Fnatic were interested in Nawwk and he played for Gamer Legion, but it couldn't get him because it was too expensive.
Yeah,
so Gamer Legion knows Gamer Legion knows the value of their player, and sometimes sets the value much higher than that. It have happened. So I don't know how the like structure have changed in that organization. It's a long time ago now.
Could that organization be the home for this team though? Because Hampus has played there before. Is there that actually could be the other solution to this problem?
Yeah, there is Fnatic, Apex, and Gamer Legion. All of these teams would become better teams with the team we are building.
Would Gamer Legion? Genuinely? Would they?
Yeah, the team we are building here, in my opinion, is a top 10 team. And they're not consistently top 10. This is a top 10 team.
I think it could be top 10.
See?
I think it's definitely top 20.
I think it could be.
And I think it could be top 10. Whereas I think this Gamer Legion team, like, it's overperforming the sum of its parts for sure. Like, you can see what kind of happens to players like Isaac and Kiels when someone like Ema leaves and it's like this huge gaping hole, and then everyone gets to step up and have a little bit more room, right? Like, but long term, like, do you really think there's not a bit more potential in kind of being the Swedish team? Like, I think that's an underrated aspect of this type of team. Isn't the players that are in there now, it's that up and coming Swedish players will want to go through this team before they go to Vitality or FaZe or something. It will be this team that they come through and get to be those star players in. And I think when you're just any international team, you're like competing with like 15 other people for the latest Czech prodigy or something. And you're like,
Just
how do you sell?
What you will get kicked 2 months later. Sorry.
Careful.
Sorry.
So yeah, it's that type of thing. Whereas if you're the Swedish team and you've got the Swedish players that we're talking about, the next Swedish prodigy, whether it is, whether Nilo's a real deal or whatever, it's this team they'll want to play in. And I think that's why you kind of need like one team per region, probably. Like, they don't have to be the best team in the world anymore. That's not what we're looking for from national teams. But the value of national teams is proving grounds for talent. You still have that kind of national identity in terms of calling, in terms of literal players. Like there are some players where you could take the flag off their name tag. I mean, we literally have taken the flag off every nameplate. Thanks, Putin. And you can guess what country they're from sometimes. Like, you can watch a Danish player being a little bitch somewhere, and you're like, he's definitely Danish. And I think these Swedish riflers, like, it goes back all the way to Forest and before. It's this, like, crispy aim, like, everything like that. I do miss a little bit of that. Like, these national teams had that real identity, and I think, of course, it makes sense everyone's going international, but there's an opportunity for these orgs to really have some, like, and it's not just a branding thing, like, it's a culture thing. It's a culture thing of being Sweden's team. Like, that should appeal to them. And I see why NIP doesn't, to be honest. I think NIP are out of the conversation because NIP have higher aspirations than being Sweden's team. They want to be a top 5 team in the world, just full stop, right? Like, number one. Like, they've said number one, whether they believe it internally or whatever. Whereas these other teams, like, I think this is a clear upgrade for them in terms of status in the scene, whether that comes with results or not. And I think that's the key thing we're talking about here. Like, we're not saying that, because it does close you off, because if there is a prodigy from Slovakia, he obviously can't come in the team and all the other teams can go for him. But I think it's worth the trade-off at this moment in time. I really do.
And especially in Sweden, because we can still pick up Norwegian and Danish players. Like, Danish is a god-awful language, so just learn them a bit of Swedish, and it's good, you know? Because the languages are similar enough. Like, I'm going to be in Denmark for Blast, and like, I can probably go buy a coffee from someone and not speak English, you know? But, so that's just an option as well. Like, the future can instead of being international, can be Nordic. Imagine a team with like we can put in Rain in this team, or a Hull Circle if we want it. We can a device, a Blame F, anything, and just have them speak Scandinavian. So that's just still a possibility. But the main thing here is the culture, like, and having that. And the Swedish scene right now is in such a big upswing that we haven't seen in so many years. We have like 4 teams right now that are legit interesting: Eyeballers, Alliance, Metasport, and Godsent. And under them, we have the Prodigies lineup, who are quite good. We have the Little Mix lineup, who is actually starting to look okay now as well. And on the side of that, you also have Esport Studio, the esports studio, who is now like broadcasting every Swedish match there is. And people are watching and people are subscribing. So having like being the number 1 Swedish team could mean so much for everyone. It's like such an easy grab from a marketing standpoint. What's sexier, being a top 15 team with 1 player from each country spotted out everywhere, or being like the biggest thing in one country? Like, okay, you get, maybe someone is a huge fan of Nawwk and loves Apex because of that, but it's much easier to be a fan of Apex if you're Swedish, if they're a full Swedish team, and you're gonna buy jerseys. Like NIP and Fnatic back in the days, like especially NIP, when they had that big culture and were the best team in the world, you can walk out on the street to see NIP jerseys everywhere. So that it's like what you can get if you just believe.
Do you think that, like, because we've seen this with other scenes, Brazil has always been a really good example of it. Do you think that, if a team doesn't take these Swedish names and put them together and like make that, it's an overused term, but kind of super team or dream team, whatever you want to call it, that because of this upswing, there's a chance that like Sweden could miss the boat of having a truly relative team again?
No. From the talent that I'm seeing now, is like in 2 years, Sweden is going to be better than it is now. So like if an organization don't pick it up, it's like going to be one of these homegrown organizations, eyeballers, Alliance, Godsent, the Swedish orgs, that eventually break through. And I think that's going to happen eventually. It's going to take some time. But right now there are players you can take to make a good team. So why not just do it and keep that on? And you have all this talent coming up, and people are actually starting to play in teams again and not just play mixes and have fun. They're like this Prodigies lineup. The core of that team has been grinding for like 2 years. That's like never heard of, And now some of those players are getting picked apart now, but they're also like rebuilding from the ground up. And it's just, if you make a team now, that you have things to take from. That's been a problem. That's why Fnatic left. That's why NIP left, because there wasn't enough talent at that time to keep it Swedish. But now, when NIP is putting the nail in their coffin of like all their Swedish fans, this is the moment where you can become Swedish again. This is the perfect time to do it.
How strong is that for NIP though? Is it kind of a vocal minority that's kind of thinking fuck NIP, fuck you for not being Swedish anymore? Or is it because it's that kind of thing? It's like Premier League teams, right? There would have been people that think Premier League teams there's only like 3 people from Liverpool in the Liverpool like squad of 30 players, and they'll think, I don't like this anymore, I'm going to go to watch my League One club or something. But the vast majority are still like, it's the team from their region. Like NIP is a Swedish organization with Swedish staff, with res. Like, how widespread is the sentiment that basically NIP have betrayed Sweden? Because from the outside, it does seem like kind of more like a vocal minority. But is that
there
wrong?
was definitely that sense of Liquid and NA, so surely it's actually quite prevalent, right?
It is quite prevalent, like both in like just in the scene among like people who just work in it, and I see fans like, of course, right now, like the most read article on Dust2.se is of course the Hampus interview, because he gave some great quotes, of course, but it's also like people like reading negative stuff about NIP now. Like it's that kind of thing, and it's vocal. Everyone's vocal. I'm not sure it's a minority. It's just vocal. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Like, just if we go by my friends, my in real life friends, they don't care about NIP anymore at all. They're going to like, okay, I'm gonna support a Ukrainian team instead because they're all Ukrainian. I'm gonna go support fucking Movistar riders or whatever. Like, just to have something.
So
yeah, it's that identity thing, right?
Yeah. The question I wanted to ask, because you were talking about how strong Sweden can be in 2 years' time, and I want a little prediction here. 2 years' time, man for man, who has the stronger scene, Sweden or Denmark?
Denmark.
Oh, that was a chance.
I'm actually kind of surprised by that, and not even like a biased reason.
It's just like all the things that are happening now in Sweden happened in Denmark 2018, like when Astralis were becoming the best team in the world. That's when all these things with like the schools actually doing stuff, with having a structured league that worked and wasn't kind of shit like the ones we have had and stuff like that, and like how the teams have been working, how the organizations have been working, like for the last couple of years. Like, Eyeballers was found or like restarted last year. We didn't have Alliance, we didn't have Godsend, we didn't have Metisport. We only had NIP and like academy teams from Young Ninjas and 00 Prospects. Like, it was nothing. it's like this year when it's starting to rebuild again. So in 2 years' time, yeah, it's possible that we're like on the same level if like Astralis and Heroic keep fucking with each other all the time. That's like the thing. If they keep doing that, then we're good. But otherwise, Denmark is just so good at everything around that. Like everything in their season is good.
The general like Swedish teams would be better than the average Swedish team would be better than the average Danish team, because I know obviously Preezy look okay at the moment, but like, you know, Heroic, when you're looking at them staying Danish, the names, obviously they're losing some big players it seems, but it doesn't exactly look like the talent is there, whereas from this conversation it sounds like we're actually at a point where in 2 years Sweden could have talent pool to have, you know, multiple teams maybe in the top 30.
Yeah, that's true, but also like Blame F and Device are still going to be insane in 2 years. That's like, so
there are them.
Yeah, and also like the Stubby, you know, they're also going to be insane. So they have like more at the top right now. We might have more talent, and like a general team like Preezy, yeah, they're right now with no practice, like, or whatever they're doing. I don't really know. Yeah, it's not like they're that much better than Eyeballers. I wouldn't say that right now, even though they have like all these names. They're not that better than Eyeballers, and like I can't even remember any other Danish teams under that right now. Just in my head, so
like
I'm gonna
Espionage and people like that, like Lucky's
team.
team.
And Ecstatic. Yeah.
It's not that deep anymore, basically. That's
this is what I mean. I don't actually think the Danish talent pool, there we go, is like that strong anymore.
Yeah, I actually haven't really thought about that, and that's actually a good point. Yeah, true. It might
so
be
maybe Sweden will be better.
Yeah, I'd rather be better than Denmark than win a major, you know. So that's over exaggerating, you know. We have quite of a rivalry with Denmark. We had like 600 wars with them or something.
Just a small one.
Just
Malmö's yours though, first.
Yeah, but that's like, who cares?
Okay, so to go back to this dream team then. You've both said they could be top 10. Kalle, I think you said consistently. Harry, I'm not sure if you meant consistently. And I won't
They can breach it.
say I don't think they couldn't break into the top 10 here and there. I won't say consistently though. Sorry about that one. But how good can this team be? Because Harry, like me and Harry spoke a few times about being realistic with expectations and saying that it's not wrong to, you know, say that your ambitions for a team is just that they win a challenger or they win a CCT here and there and they make a couple of playoffs over the course of a year, and expecting mid-table is okay. So for both of you then, how good do you think this team could be, and can they go even further? Because of, you know, Harry always likes to say national communication, like speaking the same language. Can they go further? Can they potentially challenge for a real event like an IEM and throw in Blast, because I shouldn't shit talk them all the time?
Yeah, of course. This is a team like of this caliber can win like it was saying like 6 months or whatever, like when they have time to practice and everything like that, and we hope that it's going the way we want it to. They're gonna be able to win a Dallas or a Sydney, and they're gonna make playoffs of a major. That's like without a question in my mind that because that's just what they do. Like a Swedish team will always make playoffs of a major if they're fully Swedish. That's just what happens. It's hard to explain, but I know that it's gonna happen. So it's a playoff at majors, and they have the possibility to win a smaller IEM. That's like what's in my mind.
Yeah, I think you're probably a bit more sort of positive than me naturally, but I do think that they're gonna be. It would be like a top 10 team, but more probably like over a year, probably average 10 to 15. I think that's kind of where they'd sit. Like these kind of smaller tournaments that are coming back, like the CS Asia Championships, like little tournaments like that, where if they arrive at the right timing, like I think they can sneak a win here or there. But I do think by the time he gets the big IEMs, like major playoffs, these Swiss group stages, you just never know. Yeah, I could see them in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they made playoffs, but I'd be surprised if they were like in the top 8 teams consistently, like in the 6 months' time. But I think the kind of maybe the more important question right now than how good they're going to be might just be how realistic is this? Like, what are the actual chances that Sweden will get a team like this again? Because, you know, it's we can make the argument for it, and I think we've all convinced each other that yes, like Sweden needs to have like a tier 1 team again. But what kind of benefits, like, would it be worth it for if they got major playoffs? If they could, but not even major playoffs, if they could get stickers every time, would that already be worth it for these organizations? Because there is a big ask for like an Apex or Gamer Legion to drop players they've got. Someone like Fnatic as well, like Dexter and Afro are still there. Like they're like not terrible.
Not very.
They're okay, but they're not terrible. I think Afro is still.
Afro's
a
good.
bit more potential, but yeah, is that so long-winded way of asking, but yeah, how realistic is this kind of Swedish dream team? And if a few parts are missing, would that change you going for it?
Like realistically, like I don't think this is gonna happen to Fnatic. Even like the campaign of every Swedish fan right now, like actually writing all the time that they should do it. Me writing like editorials, I think it's called in English, about it. And like I don't think Fnatic is gonna happen. I think it's possible that they have 3 Swedes. Like I think that is a possibility. I don't think that will happen for them. For an Apex or Gamer Legion, I think that's very like if there is a team that's like, okay, fuck it, we're gonna do this, and if they already have a player on that organization, then it's like that is something like they should take up at the board meeting and like actually discuss without a doubt. So that's a possibility. I don't know like if anything like this is really happening. I've heard there are talks about like making a Swedish team. I've heard that like for people have been interested like a couple of years ago, like doing the Astralis model where they actually just create a new organization and are all co-owners. But like don't think that's gonna happen. And I don't even know if this can happen at all. But it's just such a good time to, and I feel like I would give it like a 48% chance of happening.
Because I don't Brexit vote, of course.
Yeah, I don't want to have it at 50, but I want to be very close to 50. So yeah, it's so hard to say. And I'm not an insider like our favorite people in the world, Harumi and Overdrive, you know. So
yeah,
it's just hard. It's hard to know.
Yeah, I think it's fair. You know, like we've all said it now. Like it does feel like this is the time for it to happen, and there's a couple players that could definitely reinvent themselves and sort of have their kind of second chance with this team. But that's everything from me. So if it's everything from you guys, I guess we've reached the end of the episode. And with that, thank you, Kalle, for your time and coming on. We definitely couldn't have made this without your expertise. Harry, go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
and
gotta get
to
it in
everyone
there.
else, I did. I'm sorry. To everyone else, what do you guys think about the possibility of a Swedish team? And is there any random names from your random Faceit stacks that we haven't mentioned that were demons and definitely weren't cheating that should be in the team? Other than that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back next week. And I'm not going to let Harry call out a random episode this time because we ended up kind of shitting ourselves. So thank you very much. See you
And
in
if
the
you're
next one.
Swedish talent, don't match fix, please.
Oh yeah, definitely don't do that. Fuck you, Joel.